Hey there, and welcome. Ever wonder what really separates a great idea from a successful business? Well, a lot of the time it comes down to one simple thing: the plan. So today, we're going to pull back the curtain on the blueprint for business mastery and dig into how to turn those ambitious goals into a concrete reality. You've heard this a million times, right? But there's a reason it's a cliche, because it's true. Our source material for this whole discussion puts it really bluntly. Failing to plan is planning to fail. This isn't just some catchy slogan. It's a core principle for anyone trying to build something that's actually going to last. So let's start with the big question. Why even bother with all this planning? And look, we're not talking about creating some stuffy, rigid document that just sits on a shelf. Nope. Think of it more like building a compass for yourself, something to help you navigate a pretty complicated world. And this really gets to the heart of it with another great saying from our source. If you don't know where you are going, any road will get you there. In business, being on any road is basically a one-way ticket to getting lost. A plan isn't just a document. It's your destination and the map you'll use to get there. And let's be real, the world isn't exactly standing still, is it? We're always dealing with economic shifts, crazy new technologies, big social changes. And all that change, it creates these huge opportunities, for sure. But it also throws some very real threats our way. So, planning, that's your secret weapon. It's the tool you use to see what's coming so you can jump on those opportunities and dodge the threats before they even hit you. Okay, so we get why we need to plan, but what does a good plan actually look like? How do you even start? So let's get practical. Let's break down the how with a super clear 5-step blueprint for success. Okay, here it is. This is the full roadmap we're working with. Now, I know it might look a little complex at first glance, but trust me, it's a totally logical journey that takes you from just being aware of your situation all the way to taking real action. We're going to walk through every single one of these steps. All right, let's break this down. So everything kicks off with awareness. You got to know where you're starting from. Once you've got that, then you can establish your goals. After that, we get to something called premising, which is really just about making smart guesses about the future. From there, you figure out your course of action, weigh your options, pick the best path. And finally, you formulate all the little supportive plans that make the big plan actually happen. See how each one just flows right into the next? So let's zoom in on that very first step, awareness. This is all about taking a good, honest look in the mirror. I mean, think about it. You can't possibly map out a trip if you don't know where you are right now, right? You have to know your history, what you're really good at, and maybe even more importantly, where you're weak. Okay, on to step 2, setting goals. And what's interesting here is that our source points out 2 different ways you can think about this. On one hand, you've got goal planning. This is super specific. It's like saying, I will get a degree in business. Crystal clear. On the other hand, there's domain planning, which is a bit broader. It's more like, I'm going to major in something related to business. So one is like a laser-pointed destination on a map. The other is more like a general area you're heading towards. And hey, both are totally valid ways to go. All right, step 3 is premising. And yeah, I know it sounds a little academic, but it's actually simple. It's just about making educated guesses, kind of like checking the weather forecast before you leave on a road trip. Once you have those assumptions, that leads you right into step 4, figuring out and weighing all your different options. And then finally, step 5 is where you create all those smaller supportive plans. Your plans for hiring, for marketing, for capital, all the little pieces that have to work together to make the big goal a reality. And that last one, the plan for capital, that's so important it gets its own name, the budget. Okay, so you've got a plan. You know where you're going. You've even checked the metaphorical weather forecast. But how are you going to pay for the gas to get there? And that brings us perfectly to part 3, turning that brilliant plan of yours into an actual budget. So what is a budget really? Well, according to the Chartered Institute of Management Accountants, it's a plan that's been quantified in monetary terms for a specific period of time. To put it super simply, it's your plan with a price tag on it. That's it. Okay, and this next point is absolutely crucial because people mix this up all the time. We have to understand the difference between a budget and a forecast. So, a budget, that's your plan. It's what you want to achieve. A forecast, on the other hand, is an estimate. It's what you think will actually happen based on the latest info. Here's a good way to think about it. The budget is the target you're aiming for. A forecast is like your GPS calculating in real time where your arrow is probably going to land. That forecast helps you adjust your aim as you go. A budget isn't just some boring spreadsheet. It's a seriously powerful tool for management. It becomes the yardstick, right? The thing you measure your actual results against to see how you're doing. It's what points you toward making corrections when you're off course. And in many places, it's even tied directly to how people get paid. This brings us to the final critical piece of the puzzle. Look, having a great plan and a solid budget is fantastic, but they are completely useless if you just print them out, stick them in a drawer, and never look at them again. You have to be active about keeping that plan on track. And our source material nails this idea. Planning and controlling are really just two sides of the same coin. Control, that's just the process of making sure you're actually doing what you planned to do. It's asking that simple question, are we on track? It's that constant feedback that makes a plan a living, breathing thing instead of a dead document. And this visual here shows you exactly what that looks like. It's not a one-time thing, it's a continuous loop. Seriously, think of this as the GPS for your entire journey. You establish your standards, that's your destination. You measure your performance, that's your current location. Then you compare the two to see if you're on the right road. And if you're not, you take action to correct your course. It's this constant cycle of measure, compare, correct. So that naturally leads to the big question, right? What happens when you look at that GPS and realize, uh-oh, we've taken a wrong turn? What do you do if your performance is way off track? And that brings us to the most important part of this whole control loop, taking what's called remedial action. That's just a fancy way of saying you actually fix the problem. You don't just stare at it. Now, sometimes it's a small tweak to get back on the road. But other times, you might look at the map and realize your original destination wasn't the right one to begin with, and you actually need to change the plan itself. The key is that control isn't passive. It is all about taking decisive action. So there you have it. We've walked through the entire process. We've talked about mapping out your journey with a solid plan, fueling it with a budget, and then keeping yourself on the right road with a control system. This really is the blueprint for success. And that just leaves me with one final question for you to think about. What's the one plan that you need to make starting today?